Bringing you the top stories from Bonners Ferry to St. Mary's and everywhere in between, this is the North Idaho Prepcast with Ryan Scaggs.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, your weekly breakdown for everything Districts 1 and 2 in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney, joined by Ryan Scaggs. We took a little time off for spring break. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing well, even though my kid's not on spring break until next week. So we could have a visitor in next week's show.
There you go. Well, it's so weird because over in East and West Idaho, they're on spring break this week, but up north they wait a week, huh?
Yeah, we're not on spring break till next week. Although today, I mean, it's like 60 degrees and sunny, so I'll take it. So
yeah, I can't complain about that too much. So the nice thing is that at this time of year, it's always a coin flip as to whether teams from the north can actually begin spring sports.
It was snowing like a week ago.
Right. And over in East Idaho, it's kind of the same story. But I think, now that we're at the tail end of March, I think every spring sport, every school at least has been able to get one competition, whether it's one track meet, one game, one match, something on the table, right?
And when in doubt, you head to Lewiston like everybody else does, I guess. I know that like half the CILs play, like Grangeville and half the White Pine League have played their baseball and softball games in Lewiston so far this year. So, and then Lewiston had a huge track meet last week, and yeah, so the Valley's been popping, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I noticed some of the baseball teams went over to Washington to compete as well. There was a tournament in Asseton. Am I saying that right? Asseton?
No, you are not. That is Asotin. Yeah.
Asotin.
And if you're from Asotin, there's no way, and it's just Asotin. I'm a Clarkston kid, so like I grew up in Asotin County. Yeah, so it's Asotin.
you could tell my Washington knowledge is limited.
Or you get like the NSFW warning if you say that again.
Yeah, right. Asotin. There was a big tournament in Asotin that Orofino and Kellogg were at, and I know the 5A schools have been playing some of the Spokane area schools as well. So let's start there. Baseball and softball. This is always kind of the big marker where fans really start paying attention because those two huge spring break tournaments for baseball and softball are taking place in the Boise Valley this weekend. Baseball actually started today. Softball will start tomorrow. And so for casual fans around the state, this is when they really start tuning in.
Yeah. And, you look at some of the teams that are competing down there too. I mean, you've got like Lakeland and Moscow and Coeur d'Alene, and Lewiston taking place down there. Although I didn't see the games on who Coeur d'Alene or Lewiston are playing, but I saw Lakeland and Moscow's games. But Lakeland getting a draw where they're playing Emmett, Boise, Nampa Christian, and Ridgeview. You got Moscow taking on Century, Jerome, Fruitland, and Skyline. So I think the Bears got a pretty difficult draw, but they actually have a pretty talented team. They have a youth movement going on that they've got some young dudes on that team that they can absolutely rake. So I would think Moscow and Lakeland have, fairly competitive season, and Sandpoint in their own right too. They've got some players of their own, and I was actually trading messages with Jason Elliott from the Coeur d'Alene Press last week about some of the local players, and there's some dudes that are playing baseball up here in Kootenai County and North that are going to be pretty darn successful, and they've got you got what CJ Sharples from Post Falls and Tyson Rutherford, Ryan Schneider, Coeur d'Alene signed with Belmont, so you got some like a D1 player there, Cooper Larson. And a few other kids that are taking place that are playing the next level. So there's some dudes out here in North Idaho, and you look at Lewiston's team, and they're absolutely stacked. And the Valley's just a factory for baseball. If you look at the history of Lewis Clark State College, with these teams heading down south, I think it's a good early test to kind of see where you're at before you head to state later in the year. But I think it'll be super competitive.
Yeah, and we should mention as well on our website, IdahoSports.com, this is our spring preview week. Monday, we had a lacrosse preview. Tuesday, we had the track and field. Yesterday was tennis. Thursday, we're recording this on Thursday afternoon. Our state baseball preview is up, and tomorrow will be state softball, provided I can finish writing that when we are finished up here. That's what I got on the agenda today, Ryan.
No, that's awesome.
But all your spring sports preview coverage is right there on our website, IdahoSports.com. And yeah, you mentioned Tyson Rutherford, I think from Post Falls, has the potential to really dominate this year. He turned in some really electric starts on the mound last year for the Trojans. But of course, Post Falls went into districts as the top dog and didn't get to state. It was Coeur d'Alene that got there, and Lake City was the other team that was in the mix.
Lake City's had a rough start. They're 0-3 right now. I mean, they've played some tough teams out of the Greater Spokane League, so they haven't had any easy draws necessarily. Playing, I think, Meade, Mount Spokane, and Shadle Park, so they've had some decent competition already. You look at Lewiston, they're 4-0, and they spanked Central Valley from Spokane, which is a really good team. And then they swept Coeur d'Alene in a doubleheader, 7-3 and 10-6. Lewiston, in my mind, might be the favorite just as far as complete lineup. I don't know what their bullpen's like necessarily, but we know Post Falls obviously has the dominant starter, but can they put it together in the infield behind him and, get that batting order rolling?
Yeah, Cruz, Hepburn, and company leading that Lewiston baseball.
There's some dudes on that team. Yeah, I mean, those names, and they're good. And that, like I said, that talent's a factory, and you'll see a couple of those guys playing probably for LC next year. So
definitely. And then, yeah, you mentioned some of the lower levels for baseball. 3A, 2A really haven't gotten going too much. We talked about Kellogg went over to Asotin and went and played in that tournament.
Nice job there.
Thank you. I think Bonners Ferry is probably still the favorite in the IML, the Intermountain League.
Yeah.
2A, that's wide open to me. Grangeville was so good last year, but they graduated almost everybody.
St. Mary's might be sneaky. They got a couple young guys. They got a little flamethrower of a pitcher that had 11 strikeouts the other night against Priest River. So he only pitched 5 innings, and then they ended up sneaking out the win. But I think St. Mary's is a team to keep an eye on as somebody flying under the radar. But yeah, that conference is wide open.
Yeah. And then of course there's the White Pine League, which is like, honestly, they get 3 spots to state, and any of the teams in the league are capable of getting one of those 3 spots. But yeah, I think you have to give the nod to Genesee, the defending 1A champs, and Prairie and Kamei. They were the other.
Potlatch is going to be in the mix too. So yeah.
And Potlatch has a really good baseball tradition historically, right? They've had a couple of down years by their standards, but I think right now, initially, I still give the nod to those 3 teams that got to state last year: Prairie, Kamei, and of course Genesee. But man, that's going to be a wide open league. We just saw Prairie lost their first game of the season in softball 4-3 to Clearwater Valley, and so I think baseball and softball are both going to be very unpredictable.
Well, I mean, Prairie and baseball, they're averaging. They haven't had a game, I believe, other than their one loss under 13 runs. So their ability to score runs is there. The defense and pitching behind it, is yet to be seen. I mean, they beat Clearwater Valley 13-3, Kamei 13-6, and Lapway 19-4. So they're beating one of the better teams in the league 13-6. That says something about the Pirates and their baseball team this year.
Yeah, and I was broadcasting the 1A state baseball tournament last year in Orofino, and I'll tell you this: whichever team can keep base runners off the base paths is the team that's going to be most successful. And that's walks and errors, because there just aren't a lot of guys that are going to smash it over the fence at the 1A level. It's going to be a lot of stuff on the infield, bloopers to the outfield, and whoever can keep base runners off the bases is going to be the most successful team. So.
Yeah. Or if you hear like some weird noises in the background, I can literally see my dog jumping up, trying to look at me through the window from outside.
That's funny. That's good.
Normally she's asleep on the floor next to me, but right now she's like going crazy outside. So excuse that.
Well, spring weather, right? Finally get to go outside and enjoy the sunshine a little bit. Okay. So let's talk about softball. Because there's a lot of good quality softball teams up north as well. I mentioned Prairie just had their season opener against Clearwater Valley last night. In the White Pine League, I really do think Potlatch probably the favorite. They went into state last year, I thought, as the overall favorite. They got knocked out by Glens Ferry right away, but Glens Ferry went on to win the whole thing, and Potlatch battled all the way back around. So the Loggers with Coach Butterfield leading the way, I think, have a really good team.
Yeah, I mean, that White Pine League is going to be an absolutely brutal as far as competition goes. And it's such a level playing field. I mean, all those gals, play a lot of softball throughout the summer and stuff too. So they're used, and those communities they wrap themselves around baseball and softball, and they really embrace it, and they do a great job of it and getting the kids to come out and play. And then you look at the athletes that are out there too. I mean, shoot, they're just as good as some of the bigger schools too. So you look at that White Pine, I don't think that the talent level drops off too much when you get to like the CIL and the 2As. You look at Orfino is going to be, I think, surprisingly good this year. And then obviously you've got St. Mary's with something to prove, and Grangeville that's out there too. So, the CIL is going to be a little bit more tough, but you get into like 3As, 4As, and 5As, and it's going to be, anybody's game. I think this year you might see a surprise champ in each league.
Yeah, for sure. Quick note on St. Mary's in terms of just gaudy statistics last year. The best pitcher up north by far was Tacey Watkins for St.
Absolutely.
Mary's. She routinely had 17, 18, 19 strikeout games. I mean, it was just insane what she was able to do in the pitcher's circle. So I'm very excited to see what she does this year. So yeah, you mentioned 3A. I don't really know. I think anybody is capable of winning 3A. 4A, I think probably you give the nod to. I mean, I think that's pretty wide open too. Actually,
it's a hat. It's going to be draw from a hat.
Yeah,
I really see it that way. I know Sandpoint likes their lineup a lot. We'll see if they can put it together. I think offensively is the part where most of these teams kind of limited themselves a little bit last year. Moscow's going to be competitive. I think that 3-team league, it's just like any other sport. It's kind of like who shows up, and then who gets hot late down the stretch, and you get around districts time, who's got the hot pitcher on the mound that gets those 2 victories, and they find their way into state. But the IEL is going to be interesting at the 4A ranks. The 5As, I mean, kind of the same story. I don't know. It's really anybody's guess on who's going to really run away. I think you could see a surprise team come out of the mix in the 5As, but I would go to what really wins, and it's pitching, and you're going to hang around who's got the pitchers and who's got the arms in the bullpen. And those are going to be my favorites for this year. I mean, I haven't done a ton of research on the 5A teams yet because I was doing all the track stuff earlier. So I'll have more info on that next week. But I know that they're pretty big. Like Moscow's playing Homedale, Boise, Ridgeview, and Payette this week. Lewiston drew Bora, Capital, Waihe, and Mountain View. So they're playing an all 5A schedule.
Ooh, that's tough.
That's a meat grinder for the Bengals. Sandpoint's got Emmett, Valley View, Cuna, and Twin, which isn't easy at all. And then Lakeland drew Twin Falls, Cuna, Middleton, and Boise. So I think of those teams that had probably the best draw might be Moscow, just by getting a 3A team on their schedule. But that's not knocking anything against Payette because they're pretty good too. So, but yeah, you look at Lewiston, they've got an absolute brutal draw.
I'll tell you, among all those teams, there ain't no bargains anywhere. There's nothing.
No.
They're all bad. So I can tell you a little bit about the 5A IEL. I'm working on this statewide softball preview, and I sent these preseason questionnaires out to a couple of coaches around the state. Not every coach, but Post Falls has a new coach, Katie Sin, and she filled out her questionnaire and gave it back to me and gave me a lot of good info about the IEL. So Post Falls, I think the defending champs, they look very good. They bring back pitcher McKenna Moak and catcher Alyssa Krause. So when you can bring back your battery, they both earned all conference. It's a good place to start. Lewiston, I think, is going to be also in the mix. They've got the Barney sisters. There's 3 of them. There's a freshman Barney that's on the team, and I don't know if she's the third sister or a cousin. I didn't have time to double check that, but there's 3 Barneys on the Lewiston squad, and they're going to be really solid as well.
And there's a bunch of kids that are on those like 14 or 15U, 16U teams that are they can flat rake. They can hit the snot out of the ball. So I think the Bengals will put up some runs this year for sure.
Definitely. So Taryn Barney is a senior, Lauren Barney is a junior, and then they have a freshman as well. And then Coeur d'Alene, Coach Sin said, look out for Coeur d'Alene because, even though last year they, I think they went 2-10 in league or something like that, but she said, they returned most of their team from last year, and they brought a lot of competition, and they got better as the year went on. So Coeur d'Alene maybe as a dark horse. Skylar Burke leading the way there. And by the way, can we give a quick shout out to Skylar Burke? Did you see what she did in the Idaho statewide all-star basketball game 2 weeks ago?
That was impressive. And
on IdahoSports.com.
UC Santa Barbara future player for basketball. She's a stud. And I've had a few conversations with people statewide in the media. They've been asking me questions because I got to watch Coeur d'Alene a ton this year. And they're like, hey, who's the best between her and Maddie Simons? And I'm like, draw a name out of a hat. It's like, yeah, go ahead. But I mean, Skylar Burke, I would flat the games that I covered, she was the best player on the floor, bar none. And she's a great player. I know Coeur d'Alene will miss her, but she's a better kid, is what I've heard. And she's just a good kid to be around. And so yeah, she had an awesome game. That playoff that all-star game. Oh, what a performance.
Yeah, 40 points, a new statewide all-star game record.
You're doing that against the best competition in the state too. I mean, like
she was out there to win. I mean, I know her team didn't win, but she was diving on the floor for loose balls. She was at 38 points, and the previous record I think was 39. And she must have known. Somebody must have told her, because she was shooting 2 free throws. And she made the first to bring it to within 38, and then she missed the second intentionally to try and get the rebound so she could score. And she ended up scoring the record-breaking basket about a minute later, anyways. But it was pretty funny to watch. So that was. We had to get that in there because she is playing softball for Coeur d'Alene as well, and what a tremendous talent she is. So
yeah, and we didn't actually talk about that all-star game, but man, you had some talent in both those games, the boys and the girls games. There was some players in those games, man.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and IdahoSports.com was glad to bring all of that great coverage to you. So
yeah, sorry, continue. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. So last week was kind of the big opening weekend for track. You mentioned that big meet in Lewiston. That's where a lot of the first like big meets of the season. There'd been some triangulars and quadrangulars and stuff like that. But what did you glean from that first big weekend of competition in track and field?
If your name starts with a D or it's Dylan, you're fast. I said, because Dalton Wild from Post Falls ran an 11.3, Dylan Rader from Moscow ran an 11.26, and Dylan Wolf from Post Falls ran an 11.38 in the 100. That, I mean, there's some crazy times, and then there's some small school girls that can flat scoot, and we'll talk about some of the times. But I gleaned the top 3 times for most events, or the top 2 times at least, or at least ones that are of note statewide. But yeah, what I've taken from track so far is that the IEL is just quick, and that's 5A and 4A. You look at the 4A. The 4A is wide open between Moscow and Lakeland. I think in the sprints, you look at both those teams, and there's some dudes that can fly, and they haven't even ran their fastest times yet, too. That's the crazy part about this. You've got guys like Thomas Calder and John Cornish that still haven't broke 11.5 yet. They're still getting their legs under them coming out of winter sports. So, there's going to be some, I think by the time we hit May, there'll be guys that we may see a couple guys break 10.8 in the 100, which is flying down the track, and they're not far off now. But I mean, we may have multiple guys that run sub 11 out of North Idaho.
That's really good. I mean, 11 is kind of if you run 11 or less, you're in.
I'd say, yeah, if you're like 11.35 and under, you're fat. I mean, like your state quality speed, but yeah. So like you look at the 100 between those guys, and then the 200, Dalton Wilder and a 22.81. Dylan Wolf's at 22.98. Dylan Reeder's at 23.72. So there's a little bit of a jump there. But in the 400, Terry Edwards from Lakeland's got the top time at 52.26. Jacob King from Coeur d'Alene's at 2:02.50 in the 800. That's a pretty dang good time. He's got like 2 seconds on the next closest guy, which is Ben Ricks from Sandpoint. He also ran a 4:29 mile. And then Max Servey Skinner from Coeur d'Alene ran a 9:54 in the 3200, which if you do the lap times on that is ridiculous. Rusty Lee from Sandpoint has bested the field by almost 2 seconds in the 100 hurdles. Hit 15.49. So he's smoking down the track. He's had a couple great times the last 2 weeks. He's also got the best time in the 300 hurdles at 40.37. Not too far behind though is Cody Morse from Lakeland at 40.99. So some 4A guys are leading there in the 4x1. Post Falls' 4x1 team ran a 43.55. And Lakeland's is second at 45.03. So there's like a 2-second gap between those teams. I mean, that's how fast that Post Falls group is. And they also ran, the Post Falls has the top time in the 4x2 at 130.63. And they have the top 4x4 time at 336. So the shot put, Thor Kessinger from Lewiston has thrown at 49, 8.5, that's a nice toss there. And then Reed Thomas from Orfino at 48.1. Thor also has the top discus distance at 155.8 so far. Josh Haug from Lakeland and Jack Cleawer from Coeur d'Alene have both high jumped 5'10". We'll see them break 6 foot, I'm sure, as the season goes on. Long jump, Chase Berg from Post Falls went 23.3. Luke McCorkle's second at 21.11.5. Triple jump, Chase Berg, 43.2.5. That's a pretty nice jump.
That's good.
That's a dang good jump. And then Caleb Skinner from Moscow at 42.9. And then pole vault, Cody Morse from Lakeland at 13.1 this early in the season. So I know they're hoping he might hit 14 or over as the season goes on. On the girls' side, Coeur d'Alene's really fast. Really, really, really fast. Kaitriana Burrell ran a 13 flat 100. She's going to break 13. I mean, that's coming. Maricela Nelson's right there behind her, 13.04. And Katura Vogel Greenwood from Lake City is at 13.08. So, and that was all in the same meet, in the same heat. I mean, that's 13, 13.04, 13.08. Just bang, bang, bang is a crazy tight heat. Emily Collins from Lewiston ran the 200 at 26.2. Cadence Beck from Highland of Craigmont has the second best time, 26.67. So she's right in there. And then Maricela Nelson from Coeur d'Alene at 26.75. Emily Collins also owns the fastest 400 time at 57.99. Cadence Beck's in second at 58.6. Samantha Wood dominates the 800, 1600, and 3200, and it's not even close. Her 800 time was 2:12. Her mile was 4:53.64, and 3200 is 10:49.71. That's pretty dang good. And then in the hurdles, Damaris Stuffle from Lewiston's at 16.84. The 300 is Annika Uren from Lewiston is 49.63. The Lake City 4x1 team is at 51.73. Lakeland's got the best 4x2 at 149.6. And Lewiston's 4x4 is at 409. Shot put, small school alert, Isha Abubakabari of Bonners Ferry, 38.8 in the shot put. I believe she's only a sophomore,
Yes,
too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, she was awesome as a freshman last year. So
yeah. And then Capri Sims has the second best toss at 34.11.5, which just tells you how good Aisha's like. That's a heave. And then discus, Lily Finisi from Coeur d'Alene, 112.6, and then Lindy Kessinger from Orfino's at 111.1. Addie Kiefer from Lakeland's at 109.5. High jump, Emma Harless from Post Falls has gone 4:10 so far. Pole vault, Amy Madsen from Post Falls is at 10 foot. And then you have Morgan Burt from Bonners Ferry, who's at 9 foot. Long jump, Katie Wessels has gone 16.1. And then triple jump, Maya Paulson of Moscow, 33.10. Those are my top jumps and times of the season so far for like 2 weeks in. So
yeah, a couple of things that stood out
there.
Yes, as always, definitely great notes. Couple of things that stood out to me. I think anytime I think of track and field in North Idaho, the first thing I immediately think of is Samantha Wood from Post Falls, because she rewrote the record books last year. Her name is all over those distance races, and it's going to be so fun watching her try to better her school record times this year. You mentioned
when you start bringing in some of the kids from Spokane, and they start getting some of those crossover meets. I know there's a huge meet that happens over at Central Valley High School that I'm thinking Post Falls will be there for that one. Lake City hosts a nice big invitational as well. There's going to be, her times are going to continue to go down. I mean, she's going to keep rewriting those record books for sure, because her times this early in the year are crazy good.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy what she's been able to accomplish. She's already, and she's gone out of high school season and run some competitions as well.
I believe she won the Spokane Indoor.
Yeah.
In the open class. So yeah, she's that type of track athlete. She's just a great athlete for the Trojans.
She did. Yeah. She went to the Lilac Grand Prix in Spokane in February, and she ran a 5:06.7 in the mile, which is awesome. So
yeah,
that's going to be
now she's already at 4:53.64. So
yeah,
outdoor.
It's just crazy to think of. You mentioned Rusty Lee from Sandpoint. If I'm remembering correctly, the 300 hurdles was his better event last year. The short hurdles, it'll be fascinating to see if he can topple Landon Helms from Emmett at State. Yeah. He is committed to Texas A&M for track. I think more for pole vaulting. But that's going to be a fantastic duel, I think, down the line at State. And then Orofino's got some good throwers, both on the boys and the girls side, capable of, I think, placing in shot and disc and maybe sweeping. We'd have to wait and see, but they have that potential, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, you look at Ruby Kessinger from Orofino too. I mean, she's a great athlete. They've got track athletes, period. And especially for a small school, I think that they're gonna hold their own once State rolls around for sure.
Definitely. So there's also tennis going on up north. Tennis is like the most difficult, I feel like, because you can do a track meet in bad weather. Baseball and softball, as long as you get things dried out well enough, you can get it going. But
tennis is a suntan sport. Let's be honest. Like I coached it. Yeah, I know. I know what it is. Yeah.
And I know there's some good individuals from Lakeland this year in tennis. Team wise, a team from the north is probably never, I won't say never, but it's going to be very hard for a team from the north to ever go down and win State, simply because of representation. And since the districts are smaller, they just don't ever get enough players to State to factor into the team race. But individually, there's definitely some good ones. I know Coeur d'Alene Charter at 3A is going to have some really good tennis competitors as well. So there's a lot of good stuff going on in tennis also.
Yeah. I mean, like Post Falls and Lakeland had a really competitive match last night. Post Falls got the win because they swept the singles, but Lakeland got all but one of the doubles matches. But since they swept singles, they ended up picking up the W on that. I think it was the number 2 girls doubles that lost, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just kind of going off memory. That ended up not splitting the duel. So, they're going to be good, but Sandpoint's going to be good. They took their team down to Clarkston, Washington for a big tournament, and ended up getting 9 medalists down there. So Sandpoint's going to be rolling again, and they're just a good program. I mean, I coached against them for years, and they've got good kids, but they got great coaches too. And so I see the Bulldogs continuing their trend of success, but Lakeland is right there. They went from, a few years back not having anybody to now they're like from the outhouse to the penthouse. So the Hawks are rolling in tennis, which is good to see. So it'll be good to watch as the season goes on.
And I know Moscow has a really solid mixed doubles team. Yes. Sammy Younger and Bryce Hansen. And they're just a junior and sophomore, so they could do it for 2 more years. They're both really good for Moscow and mixed doubles as well. So those are some of the things we're keeping an eye on there. Was there anything else, Ryan? That was a pretty comprehensive
you were thinking we were going to be short, and I was like, not so fast, my friend.
Definitely. And so here's the deal. There's so much going on that we're physically not going to be able to hit everything every single week. We're going to try and just bring you kind of the biggest stories or things that really stood out to us. And so if there is an athlete or a story or a team that we haven't talked about in a while that you think we need to, hit us up. You can send me an email, Brandon at IdahoSports.com. We're also both on Twitter. I'm at Brandon_Baney. And Ryan, you're at Idaho Game Night, right?
Yep.
So you can hit us up on Twitter. You can send me an email. We would love to hear about those athletes up north, because that's, without our audience, this is what we do it for. We do it for these high school athletes, to give them a little more exposure, get their stories out there. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all for the kids.
Definitely. So yeah, check out all of our spring sports previews on the website, IdahoSports.com. And otherwise, we'll be back next week to break down more spring sports action. For Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning into the North Idaho Prepcast on Idaho Sports.